Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at Special Booster 1.5 and taking a look at all of its tools and possibilities, where the whole focus of the deck is trying to capitalize and maximize on Lilithmon and Mastemon's abilities to utilize the trash in some unique and interesting ways. So, going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Pagumon. So, Pagumon is really good because he has this nice inheritable ability of, on attack, mill the top card of our deck. So that way we are filling up our trash and getting it to a better trash state. So that way we could utilize it in some different ways, depending on which mega we're going into. But the main Digitama of the deck is going to be DemiMeramon, because DemiMeramon has this really powerful inheritable effect of on delete, we get to draw one card and discard one card. So, discarding cards is definitely more powerful than milling cards, just because we get to choose which cards we're putting into our trash, so that way we could set up certain lines of play and potential combos depending on how the game progresses. But drawing cards is also really good because it's getting us through our deck faster, and we get to see more of our cards, so that way we could make better and more powerful plays. So overall, DemiMeramon is just an absolutely fantastic consistency tool for the deck. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Gabumon. So Gabumon is basically doing the exact same things as DemiMeramon, except on a rookie body, and he gets to draw 2 and discard 1, so he's even more powerful. But again, the real reason why we're playing him is because he is just a very good consistency tool for the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tapirmon. So Tapirmon is just an absolutely insane card for this deck to be playing around with, just because of how much utility and application this card has. So he has the native ability of on delete, we get to draw 1 card. So this is just really good because we could use this ability offensively or defensively, depending on how the game progresses and depending on how we want to utilize the card, because we could utilize him to swing at the opponent's security to get him into the trash, and then we're going to be drawing a card for that, or we could use him as sacrifice fodder to just be able to sacrifice him and utilize his on delete ability to draw us a card that way. So he's just a really good card for the deck to be playing around with, and is definitely one of the better res targets for the deck to be playing around with, just because of his high level of utility. And as I mentioned before with drawing cards is really good because it helps the overall consistency of the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Candlemon. So Candlemon is just that value vanilla, where he is just a low play cost and a low evo cost, making him just a very good efficiency tool for the deck to get into our higher stages. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gazimon. So Gazimon is just another really powerful Digimon to just be sitting around with, where he has this native ability. During both players' turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by Tamer effects. So this is just really good because it could potentially shut out certain lines of play that the opponent might be doing, and it's definitely a really good counter to the opponent's strategy of manipulating the memory if that's what they're going for. So he's just, again, another really good utility piece to try to control and manipulate what the opponent could do based on the matchup. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Vilemon because he's just the blocker of the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Devimon because Devimon is one of the primary removal cards of the deck because he natively has the retaliation ability. So this is when this Digimon is deleted after losing a battle, then it gets to delete the Digimon it was battling with. Just one thing to note, this is by card effect, so if they do have any protection against card effects, then this does not work. But it's still a really good ability to have nonetheless, just because there's a lot of cards that don't have that protection, and this is just a really good removal card for basically most of the Digimon in the game, as long as they're caught in a rusted state and we can attack into it. And then on top of him natively having the retaliation ability, he also has the really powerful inheritable ability of giving the retaliation ability. So even if we utilize the Digimons that we're digivolving into, they're still going to have the retaliation ability, and they're still going to be a huge threat for the opponent. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of BlackGatomon. So BlackGatomon is a really interesting card just because it has the security ability, where at the end of battle, you get to play this card without paying its memory. So having a surprise card come out of your security is definitely something really, really powerful to be playing around with, just because it can help set up so many plays and it has so many applications, and all of that possibility is definitely why I'm choosing to run BlackGatomon. But this is another flex spot where if you want to, you could just utilize any other level 4 that you want, but I'm just choosing BlackGatomon just because of all of the unique applications that having a Digimon coming out of the security could have. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kimeramon. So Kimeramon is definitely a really powerful ultimate because he is another primary source of removal for the deck. So he has this really nice on-play ability where we get to delete one of our Digimon to delete one of the opponent's level 5 or lower Digimon. So this is really good because we are playing with a whole bunch of on-delete skills that we want to trigger. So being able to trigger those with Kimeramon and deleting the opponent's Digimon, definitely something really powerful and is definitely something we want to do in the deck. And then the last ultimate that I'm going to be running is going to be 4 copies of LadyDevimon. So LadyDevimon is an absolutely insane card for this deck to be playing around with because she has this nice when digivolving ability where we get to draw 2 and discard 2. So this is really good because, again, drawing cards allows us to see the cards that we want to see more consistently. And then on top of which, discarding 2 is selectively filling up our trash, so that way we could utilize the trash in many different ways based on what mega we're playing. And then on top of which, she has a really powerful inheritable effect where during your turn, once per turn, when we use an option card, we get to delete one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon. So we are going to be utilizing a good number of option cards in the deck, so just being able to have the extra benefit of deleting one of the opponent's level 3 Digimon on top of playing the option card is definitely, again, some really powerful things for the deck to be doing. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Mastemon. So Mastemon is just a really powerful card for the deck to be playing around with, just because she has 12,000 DP, so compared to a lot of other purple Megas, she definitely is on the higher side in terms of DP, so she has a higher chance of living through a lot of security checks, and then on top of which, she also has the ability to digivolve off of purple or yellow. Even though we are going to be playing her in a mono purple deck, she does have some interesting applications depending on the yellow support cards that you play with her, if you're choosing to go that route. And then on top of all of that, she even has a really powerful when digivolving ability where we get to trash the top card of both players' security stacks, and then we get to play from our trash a level 4 or less purple or yellow Digimon. So we do get their on-play effects if they do have any, which is really, really powerful. And then just being able to trash the top card of the opponent's security is definitely, again, another really powerful ability because it's acting as pseudo burn. Even though we are trashing one of ours, it's going into our trash, and then because it's going into our trash and we're playing purple, we do have possible ways that we could utilize that card later on in the game, depending on what that card is. And then the last mega of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Lilithmon. So Lilithmon is another really powerful Digimon for the deck because this is kind of like the main focus of the deck is mostly around Lilithmon and all of the possibilities that she could do just because of all of the different options that we have to play around with. So she has this really powerful when digivolving ability where if our trash is 10 or more, then we get to return 2 option cards from our trash to our hand. So this is really good because we get to reuse some of the option cards, or if we never got to use them around the first time, then we get to utilize them now off of Lilithmon. And then on top of which, she has a really nice secondary effect, where during your turn, once per turn, when we play an option card, we get to gain 2 memory. So gaining the 2 memory back for utilizing an option card is really good, just because it makes all of the option cards that we would want to play even that much more efficient. And then speaking of our option cards, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Night Raid. So Night Raid is a really powerful option card because it has the main ability of being able to play one of our purple level 3 Digimon from our trash, and then we don't get its on-play effect, but that doesn't matter because none of our level 3s have on-play effects. So just being able to play a level 3 from our trash is really, really good because depending on the level 3 that we bring back, we could really utilize it in some different ways. And then on top of which it has another really good security ability of activating its main effect. So it's kind of also acting like a security Digimon where it just can be a surprise Digimon that comes out of nowhere, and that could definitely be a huge tempo swing depending on how the state of the game is progressed. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Heat Viper. So Heat Viper is a really powerful control tool that we have access to just because it has the main ability of being able to delete up to 2 of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon for just deleting one of our own. So this is kind of acting very similar to Kimeramon, where we need to sacrifice one of our Digimon, and then that's kind of okay because it's going into the trash, which we could utilize later, and then it's also going to possibly trigger some on-delete abilities, so that way we could get a whole bunch of additional benefits for deleting the Digimon. And on top of all that, it is going to be deleting 2 of the opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon. So if they are just sitting on a field of level 3s and 4s, then Heat Viper can definitely help tear that down, especially in combination with LadyDevimon to delete another level 3. And then Lilithmon will definitely make this card cheaper by giving us 2 memory back, so it's really only costing 3. So this card's just an absolutely fantastic card for the deck to be playing with. And then on top of which it has a very powerful security ability of being able to add it to our hand, so that way we could then try to figure out when is the best time to utilize this card. And then the last option card that we're going to be playing around with is going to be Trump Sword, because Trump Sword is basically the Gaia Force of purple. Even though it is worse than Gaia Force, it's still just a very powerful removal ability, where its main ability is we get to delete one of the opponent's unsuspended Digimon. So if they hard play something, we have Trump Sword to be able to respond, because most of the time they probably won't be able to attack with the Digimon they just played if they had to hard play it. So Trump Sword is really good for that, and then on top of which it has a nice security ability of activating its main effect, and then pair this up with Lilithmon on the field, then we could make this card cost even less by gaining the memory back. So it's just, again, another really good removal option for the deck to be playing around with, and with Lilithmon, it's definitely making it way more efficient than it should be. Next, on to the Tamers. I'm going to be running 2 copies of Matt Ishida. So the purple Matt is really good because he is the memory fixing tamer of the deck. So being able to always have our memory be set to 3 is really, really good. And then on top of which he has a really powerful on-play ability where we get to return 1 purple Digimon or purple option card from our trash to our hand. So this is just really powerful because it basically allows us to bring back any card in our entire deck outside of another tamer, and that's just really good because we could utilize this card to just help set up and to be more consistent with a lot of our plays. And then the last tamer card of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Mimi. So this is the purple Mimi, and she is really good because she's a really efficient tamer to throw onto the field. And then on top of which she has a really powerful ability where during both players' turns, when a player uses an option card, you could suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory. So similar to Lilithmon, we could use it on our turn with our options to make our options more efficient, or we could use it on the opponent's turn whenever they use an option to basically take away 1 of their memory and make their option cards even less efficient. So just that level of application definitely makes Mimi a very interesting and powerful card to be playing around with. And then the deck has a whole bunch of other tools that it could utilize, all depending on what you want to play and how you want to play. So you could think about utilizing Yamon as a alternate digitama if you want to run him as the tech 1 of, just because that purple doesn't have a whole lot of ways of DP boosting, and Yamon is good for DP boosting. You could also think about utilizing Beelzemon, just because if you're playing with Lilithmon, you want to be at that magic number of 10 cards in your trash, and Beelzemon also wants that number, so that way he could Warp Digivolve off of Itmon, and then he has a nice when Digivolving ability of a good removal effect. So Beelzemon is definitely another really powerful card for the deck to be playing around with. And then if you're going to be running Beelzemon, then obviously you're going to want to play Itmon, because being able to Warp Digivolve off of Itmon is definitely a really powerful tempo swing. And then on top of which, Itmon is also pretty decent for the deck by allowing you to fill up your trash relatively quickly with his on-delete ability. And then you also could think about utilizing Tsukaimon, just because if you're already going to be manipulating the memory, then Tsukaimon is definitely really good to do that with, especially if you're going to be sacrificing some champions. Just to try to utilize some rookie on-delete abilities, Tsukaimon's definitely a really good one for that. And then if you are going to try to sacrifice your champions more often than not, Wizardmon is probably one of the best champions that you could utilize to sacrifice with, just because he has an on-delete ability where we get to draw a card. So he's basically the champion version of Tapirmon, except he has an extra benefit where he has a nice ability where during both players' turns, if we have a yellow Digimon in play, then he gains retaliation. So he also could have that potential benefit as well if we're playing any yellow cards in the deck. And then if we are going to be playing around with these self-sacrificing synergies, then Gabumon is really good for his inheritable ability to just gain a memory every time one of our Digimon is deleted. But this only does trigger once per turn. But the fact that we have so many different ways to sacrifice our Digimon to just gain some additional memory off of Gabumon is definitely something really nice and something really good. You could also think about running Meramon, because Meramon is another efficiency tool where he just has a really low evo cost, so if you're trying to get into your higher stages that much faster, Meramon is also a really good card to think about utilizing. Now, this might come as a surprise, but Raremon is actually playable in this version of Mastemon Lilithmon, just because Mastemon's ability allows you to have these on-play abilities to actually be relevant, just because she doesn't take those away. So the fact that we have Raremon, which could basically help dig for an option card, is really, really good. And then at worst, if he whiffs, then all of the cards are going into our trash, so he's even filling up our trash faster. So Raremon is definitely a really interesting card you could think about utilizing. If we are going to be playing yellow, we definitely have some really good yellow cards that we could think about. Gatomon is probably one of the best yellow cards we could think about, just because we don't care about digivolving up into her. We just want her for her on-play ability, which we could also res her and get the on-play ability off of Mastemon, so there's that synergy as well. And then her on-play ability is really good, where if we have a purple Digimon in play, which we're primarily a purple deck, so we're going to have one in play, we get to minus 4,000 DP on one of the opponent's Digimon. So she's also acting as a really good form of removal, on top of which she also has another really good ability where during your turn, when one of your other Digimon is deleted, then this Digimon gets plus 3,000 DP, so she could potentially be a really decent level 4 for the deck to be playing around with. You could also think about utilizing Kimeramon as basically the Monzimon of purple, where it's just another good efficiency tool to try to get into our higher stages that much faster. We also have access to MagnaAngemon, where you're really trying to utilize this card for his on-play ability, where you get to recover one, and then if you digivolve him into Mastemon, then Mastemon's going to remove the one that you covered. So in combination, you basically just net zeroed on your security, gain, and loss. So that's just really, really decent, while Mastemon is also taking away one of the opponent's security. And then you also have the potential benefit to increase Mastemon's DP with his inheritable. That ability is going to trigger a little bit less often than you'd like, but still having that potential to DP boost Mastemon to hit 13 is definitely really, really powerful, because then she could start swinging over a lot of Digimon in the security. Then you also could think about utilizing Millenniumon, just because Millenniumon is the level 7 for purple currently, and Millenniumon is just a really fantastic control tool, on top of which he's just a really sticky body and hard to deal with at times. And then we definitely have some interesting option cards that we could think about running. So Darkness Claw is a really underrated purple card, just because this is one of the few purple cards that can DP boost our Digimon, so they could hit over certain Digimon in the security or on the field. And then on top of which, it also has a really nice security ability of being able to gain 2 memory. So even if and then pair this up with Lilithmon, and we could bring it back, so that way we could actually utilize its security ability and be able to put it back into our hand. And then if we play this with Lilithmon, Lilithmon will be gaining us 2 memories, so basically with Darkness Claw as our first option, we're going to be gaining net 1 memory for using it, and that's just really, really powerful to think about. And then we also have access to Dark Despair, which basically is just another removal card where we're just giving one of our Digimon Retaliation. So imagine a Tapirmon with Retaliation, and that's just pretty scary for the opponent, because they might not be able to see it coming, and they might not be playing around it, and it could definitely really ruin their board state depending on how and when you utilize the card. And then it has a nice security ability of being able to add itself back to our hand. So even if it is checked in the security, then we do get to add this card back to our hand. And then that kind of creates a mind game of when do I want to play this, especially in combination with Lilithmon, where Lilithmon will gain the 2 memory back. So this essentially will be a 0-cost option card, and it'll always pose a very big threat for the opponent. So for the most part, this is just the Lilithmon Mastemon Purple Waifu deck, and I definitely think it's a really interesting deck with a whole bunch of different tools and applications. Again, all depending on what you want to use and how you want to play it. This is just what I settled for, just because I think this is just a good shell of a deck, and it's definitely a really fun deck to play, and it's definitely a really interesting deck that the opponent might not know how to play against. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and I'll also have the deck list down in the description below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.